The mask slips. Outwardly, the Tehran government likes the endorsement of the voters, even in flawed and disputed elections like the one which apparently returned Mahmoud Ahmadinejad to power. But the treatment of detainees, prisoners and street protesters has often been brutal, though usually beyond the sight of witnesses. We have a special report now from John Lyne, which contains some graphic descriptions of ill treatment at the hands of the authorities in the Islamic Republic of Iran.
This is what happens to opposition demonstrators in Iran these days. One of the thugs is about to hit this woman on the head. But the protesters are standing their ground. These were pictures sent in or posted on the internet by opposition supporters yesterday. The demonstrators reported some of the toughest repression since the election. Tear gas, baton charges, and the firing of plastic bullets and paintballs. These crowds gathered despite all that. But the real threat is what happens if the police move in and arrest you. Ibrahim Mohtari is an opposition supporter who's now fled to Turkey. He gave us a rare eyewitness account of his arrest and treatment in prison.
I left a friend's office to do some shopping. I noticed a bike following me. I felt. Then came another bike. They got off and pushed me to a wall and forced me to get in a car with them. I was put in a cell with no windows. The mattress was covered with dry blood. I was scared. I was interrogated, beaten up and physically assaulted. It got uglier by the hour.
To support his account, he's produced a medical report and pictures. Most explosively, he's one of the first people with first-hand evidence that appears to back claims that Iranian opposition detainees have been sexually assaulted in prison. He describes being brutally penetrated.
They used a baton, any sharp instrument available to them. I regained my consciousness, finding a man sitting on top of me. I had no clothes on. I was so hurt I couldn't move. They sat me on a chair and started beating me again. I fell on the floor. I felt blood running from my head, ears and nose. Then a man appeared, touched my head and shouted at the others, "What have you done?" He looked worried. All of a sudden he felt kind and concerned, then asked me to sign a letter that said nothing bad happened to me in that place.
یعنی جنبش سبز رو روی سایت‌ها و وبلاگ‌ها برامون دنبال کرده.
There were more accounts of abuse from callers to BBC Persian TV. The authorities in Iran say BBC Persian is part of a plot to overthrow the Islamic Republic with a velvet revolution. They've threatened prison just for the act of phoning in. But after yesterday's demonstrations, PTV was flooded with calls.
From the people we get on our program, the interactive show of BBC Persian TV, we feel the hostility is getting more and more, the frustration with the government from the lack of addressing any of the issues that people are asking for them to be addressed. There is a feeling of terror because every time that a person in Iran decides to go on the streets and join the demonstrations against the government, they are making a very conscious decision of risking getting beaten up, getting imprisoned, getting all kinds of allegations about torture that we've heard, and having to go and do television confessions and all of the things we've all witnessed in the past few months.
So where do you think the opposition movement is going from here?
I think the opposition leaders are, in a way, following the crowds. They're not leading the crowds at this moment. The protesters on the streets have become more spontaneous and more self-rising in a way that they are not being led by the leaders of the opposition, namely Mr. Mousavi or Karoubi or Mr. Khatami. In a way, they are having to follow the crowds of the protesters and see where the movement is going to take them.
So what about President Ahmadinejad's government? Do you think they've succeeded now in consolidating power after the election?
I think they feel they are still at risk, because if they didn't feel that, they wouldn't feel the need of showing such brutality on the streets, or not allowing the people to do demonstrations or television appearances or the way people are being arrested and beaten up on the street, I think is a very obvious sign that if you don't feel threatened, you wouldn't be so harsh on rather peaceful group of people who are on the street.
President Ahmadinejad continues as if nothing untoward has happened, and he's persuaded a number of foreign leaders to go along with the illusion of normality. Today there was a visit by the ruler of Qatar, with whom Iran shares one of the world's largest gas fields. But the demonstrators are refusing to be silenced. In the latest protest, they even trampled over a poster of the supreme leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, an act of unprecedented lèse-majesté. The stakes are getting higher, and those trying to keep the regime in power realize it, from president to prison warders.
In Islam, rape is a serious crime. I wasn't raped, but sexually assaulted with a baton. Those who did it consider themselves Muslims. They want the Islamic Republic to survive. They must think sexual assault does not carry the same weight as rape. These men would do anything to crush those who don't like the system, even their own people.
The opposition are determined to keep harassing the government. There doesn't seem to be any immediate threat to Mr. Ahmadinejad's survival, but it's an unstable situation that surely cannot stay the same indefinitely.
John Lyon.